All right, thanks everyone for joining. Sounds like the audio is working okay. So let's get it underway. My name's Josh Osborne and I'm the product manager here at Central Innovation for the CI Tools. And today's webinar is the CI Tools Q&A webinar session, which we run every week. Probably a lot of you have been to one or more of these before, but if you're new, what these are is we just go over a couple of things that have come up during technical support in the previous week of people asking for sort of how-tos of various things, or just to cover areas that we don't think either people know about or know how to use, or based on questions that we've received from previous versions of this webinar. So we're going to be going over, today we're going to be looking at the Doors+Windows presets system using preset styles and snap sizes. We're going to look at how to make those and how to manage them and that sort of thing. And once we've looked at those, we'll have time for some questions at the end, if you have any. And we might quickly look at some stuff to do with Keynotes as well, if we have time. But largely, we're going to be looking at the Doors+Windows presets today. If you do have any questions as we go, just enter those into the chat panel as we go through. And at the end, I'll go and check in on those and see if there was any questions that came up, and I'll try to answer those on air, or later on, I'll follow you up via email to answer those if there's any like that. We will be recording the session today as well, and that'll be available on my CI probably about midway through next week. Last week's session is up there as of a few days ago, and we do that with all of them. So if you do want to refer to any older sessions, you can find those all there. I'm going to be working in ArchiCAD 24 today, but everything that we look at also applies to ArchiCAD 23 as well. So if you're using the current version or the version before, all of the stuff that we're going to be looking at today applies to that. If you're using a version older than 23, the whole system with the Doors+Windows styles was new in 23, so you won't see any of that if you're using an older version. So this will give you a good idea of how it does work once you do upgrade, but for now it doesn't apply to those 22 and older versions. All right, so just start with what are the presets in Doors+Windows? You may have heard of them or seen them as you've gone past to do something else in Doors+Windows. But what the idea with them is that you can go through and you can set up an entire chunk of different styles for your Doors+Windows that match different preset sizes as well, so that you don't have to go through and make them all in every project. So the idea here is that you would set up all of the styles that you want in your template that you use, and then you can just go into the tool and select the preset that you want to use, and essentially your work is done. The way that these differ from favorites is in that they are granular and they allow finer controls, I would say, of each. So rather than just choosing a favorite, which is a certain type of window, the way that the presets work is that you select a sort of a certain style of window, and then you can choose sub settings underneath that, which have sort of finer, more detailed levels of presets below, which we'll look at soon. And it also allows you to set the sizes as part of the preset, but as sort of subsettings again inside that preset. The Doors+Windows tools do default to come with a bunch of presets in them, but you can always make your own, of course, as well. So if you have a bunch of window types that you commonly use, you can easily go through and create those, which is what we're going to be looking at today. Save those all into your schedule, into your template file, and then those will be ready to go. If you're a BIM manager, or if you're sort of just the guy that looks after the CAD in your office, this would be a great time saver for you and for the other people that work in your projects, because it means that you will have essentially done the work up front. That means that they don't have to mess around doing that later, and it also means that you know that the things that they're using are the things that you have set up in advance, so you don't need to worry about making sure that everyone's designing their windows and doors in the same way, because you've already sort of preset them all for them. So I'm just going to start off by looking at them in the window tool. You can see at the moment I just have a fairly standard looking window here, and I don't have a preset applied to this one at the moment. And we're just going to look at where the presets live and what they look like and how you can change them. So if I go into the window tool settings here and go up to configuration, this is where the preset setting is. So it's the top level of the menu. And you can see at the moment, there's a blank white space here at the moment, which means that I don't have a preset selected at all. And so what I'm going to do is first, to start, is I'm going to choose the preset that I want. So click on this arrow here, open out the tree, and I'm just going to go through and choose some preset from here. Let's choose this one. Select that, and you'll see that the interface changes now to say the name of the preset that I selected. You can see the size is set to custom, which we'll look at shortly, but all of this data is pre-filled because it is part of the preset. So we've got the manufacturer, the range, and the description, and then based on those settings, as well as factors of other settings, you can see that it's generated a code automatically, and that's been preset to match whatever code the manufacturer, in this case Jason, expects them to look like, or what they look like in their brochure, that is. So it says JS-X, which is the value for the size, which we haven't entered yet, and then XRX, which is the way that this manufacturer in particular writes the mirror status for this particular piece of joinery. So XRX or XLX are the two options, but depending on what preset you choose, that will be different. And of course, you can set your own. I know a lot of them use OXO and XOX and that sort of thing as well. So that can be set there as well. You can see that everything's grayed out at the moment as well, because we are using our preset. And so to maintain the fact that you have chosen this preset and the thing that you're about to place will always be that preset, these settings are all not changeable at the moment. You can go in and change them if you like, which we'll look at shortly, but these are locked to the preset that we've selected. So once you've selected the preset that you want to use, the next step is to set the size, and that comes off this drop-down box, I guess, that's below the preset selection one. And you can see in here, everything is sorted by one value, and then if you open it out, it's sorted by the height as well. So all of these numbers here are the preset widths, or snap size widths, that is, and then you can open out the width that you want and find the corresponding height that you need as well. Select that, and it will apply the change. And you can see now that we have our width and height, which is 9.5 by 15C. That is now filled in the code, so we have a complete code for this one now. And obviously you can go through and restructure this to look the way that you need it to make sense for you, and that'll display on your labels and things, which you'll also look at soon. But for now, let's select what we have here and hit OK. And you'll see our window changes to be the preset that we just drew. Now, the first thing that I want to do here is to just go in and set my marker to show that code so that you can see easily as you go what presets you've got selected. So I'm going to go down to my dimension marker setting here, and I'm going to change it to the Cat Image Tools DW marker. And in the settings here, you can see that under the content, we've got an option to show the type code, and the type code is what we call that code that we were seeing before. So I'm going to hit OK with that type code turned on, and you should see the type code appear in the marker now. So you can see JS 9.5 by 15C-XRX, which is exactly what we had chosen there. Just go back to check that that is correct. Yeah, there we go, JS 9.5 by 15XRX. Now that code is live now, and because of the way that the snap sizes work, we can make changes to our window on the fly here, and the marker will update to follow that. So I'm just going to change the width of this. I'm going to move it out to here. And you can see that when I do that, it's automatically snapped to the nearest value that was available to it, and it's updated the marker. So you can see our code is now JS13 instead of 9.5 by 15C. So the height hasn't changed, but the width has. And if I go back into the settings, you'll see that it also has adopted that new snap size. So you can see 13 is showing as the width here. And you can see that 13 is now selected instead of 9.5, but our 15C is still preserved. So that lets you work with and modify. As you can see, everything is still locked to the preset here because this still conforms to the preset that we chose. It's just that we've changed the snap size value. So that's what I was meaning before with the presets, in that you can have this single slider with two fixed lights still be the preset that you're using, but the size has now changed within that, but it's still locked to values that you have preset in advance. So you can easily go through and set up a bunch of these and know that your colleagues who are also working in this template will be placing the same things that you have set up in advance, but they still have the freedom to set the things that they need to set. So that's what they look like to use. And obviously any changes, any other changes that you make here as well. So if you were to change the formatting of the code or anything like that, those will all also be reflected in the marker here as well. So it just makes it nice and easy for you to check that they are using the codes that you're expecting them to. And obviously it also means that because this is showing your code, it will match up with what you have it set to match up with. So in this case, it's set to match up with what shows in the brochure for this particular line of windows. So now that we've applied a preset, let's look at how you can actually build a preset yourself, and also how you can ignore presets entirely if you don't want to use them. So if you're not interested in setting up presets, so maybe you're just doing a one-off window or a custom window, it might be made by the same people, but it's customized. You can completely ignore the preset system entirely if you like by just hitting this custom button here. And that will unlock all the fields, as you can see here, and let you do whatever you want. You can see the height and width are still grayed out here though. So to undo that, just go in and choose custom size there, and you'll see those disappear now, which means that no snap size is being set. So you can just do whatever you like with the sizing as you would normally, just by setting the sizes here instead. So this is a completely customized window now with no restrictions on anything that you can change. Once you've set the custom window that you do want, so you can go through and change any of the settings that you would like, you can then come in here and then type in a name for it. And once you do that, you'll get the option to save it as a style. And once we do that, you'll see in our preset selector that test 5 is now available as a preset that we can apply. Obviously, this one looks exactly like the JSON one that I had selected before because it is essentially just a copy of that. I just edited that and then saved it as a new thing. But of course, you can create these from scratch yourself as well, so that the settings will all be essentially blank and you can set them to whatever you need to. Now that we have this actual preset selected, we can go to edit and we can make changes to that as we go. So this is how you will build up the presets that you want in your project. So hit edit, the fields will become ungrayed, and then you can set these values to whatever you need them to be. And as you go, just make the changes that you want. And anytime that you hit save, the preset will be saved and everything will be relocked. And then if you want to make further changes, just hit edit again and continue on. So now that we're in edit mode, again, we can go through and say, look at the frame settings for this particular window. If we want to make changes to that, you can see everything's grayed out here. And that's because this is a sub setting which has its own preset. The moment you can see it's set to sliding. But we can go through and we can change this to a different preset. So we could change this to this other preset called standard, or again, we can do the same as we could at the higher levels. we can make this custom, or we can edit an existing option. So this one is the standard one. We can make a change to the frame size here and save it, which will save over top. Or we can go into custom mode, set it to what we want it to be, and then save it as a new preset. So we'll type in the name for it there and hit save as style, and now we're using test 6 here, and it's relocked to that. And then we can just go back to configuration and hit save, and that now test 5 is now saved as using that new frame preset. So this is how you will build up the type of window that you want. You can go through and set the overall settings here, and then jump down into each of these sub settings and set those as well. So that's building up the actual detail of the Windows setout. And then you can also set up the size groups as well by using the snap size control here. And that will let you control what is available in this list here. So if we hit the snap sizes button, you can see at the moment we're looking at the widths, and you can see that it's pre-filled with the widths that you could see that were selectable before. So numbers 1 through 8 are starting from 8.1 and going up to 13. And you can see the values that are set in those. And then if we go to heights, you can see the corresponding heights that we had there as well. You don't have to use these ones that that are here though. You can go through and make your own. Obviously, you probably won't want to just use the default things here. So let's go back up to the top level, and we're going to edit again to turn on edit mode. You can see we're at a custom size now. Now if we go into snap size, you can see that the fields are available to edit. So you can go through and you could modify the codes or the unit widths, or you could just generate a range of values yourself. So I'm just going to delete all of these ones. And then you can see, you always have to have 1 in there, sorry, so it's going to default to that one. But you can see over on the left here, I've got this option to generate a list of snap sizes. So I'm going to do that. I'll set my increment to 300 just so that's nice and easy to see what's going on. The offset is 10, and it's limited to between 400 and 2400. So I'm just going to drop that down to 300 so that we can see nice and easily how it works. So between 300 and 2400, and then I just hit the generate button, and it will automatically generate a list of available values here. So you can see the bottom one is 310, which is our 300 increment plus the 10 offset. And then it has gone through and added all of the other values that it should have done based on that using our division of 2. You can change this to division of 1, which will give you a much more straightforward set where it is literally just 300 increments on top of the base value all the way up to as far as it can go. So 2,110, sorry, is as high as it can go to fit under our limit of 2,400. And now that you've done that, you can also go through and insert your own values manually as well by hitting this plus button. And then you could say this one is 1B, and it has a width of 330. So you can go through and make those changes as well. So the generator on the left is to give you a sort of a automatically generated starting point for these snap sizes. And then you can go through and use the plus and minus values here to remove and add any values that you need to have in here that aren't part of that default set, because there will always be exceptions as you go through. And then you can go through and hit the heights option and do exactly the same thing. So we could set our increment to 150 here. Limits are 300 and 2400, which looks fine. And if I hit generate, it's going to go through and generate a full list of anything that makes sense there. So you can see it starts with 300, which is my limit, and goes all the way through to 1650. And then if I go to the second page of values, goes all the way up to 2400. I change this to 600 and then regenerate is going to redo the list based on my new value. So you can see it's a much shorter list now because 600 is a higher increment, but it's fitting them into there. And then I can also go through again and then use the plus and minus to make my own changes here. So I'm going to add a 1.5 at 900. And then once I hit back here, you'll see that my size field, let's just save that, my size field shows the new values that I've generated. So 1 through 7, we've also got our 1B showing, and you can see the height values available in each part here as well. So it now is a actual preset which has snap sizes and a preset setting as well. So you can go through and generate your whole catalog. I know this looks kind of complicated, and it is kind of complicated because you're setting up an entire system for Windows at the front, but it's the sort of thing, like with having a good ArchiCAD template, if you put in the work at the beginning, it will reduce a lot of work as you actually are using that in future. And if you are a BIM manager or sort of CAD manager for your office, it will reduce a lot of headache in that you know in advance that everyone will be using the things that you have set up. You don't need to worry about checking them and that sort of thing. And if you display those codes on your markers as well, it means that you can easily go through and check that everyone is using the presets that they should be using. The options work roughly the same way in the door tool as well. So I won't go in and show you how that works because the way that it is set out is exactly the same. The only other thing that I want to look at quickly is that once we have set these, this is just going to change because of our new preset that was set up, but you can see the code is still being applied as it should. The other thing that you can do with these presets is go into here and go to Joinery Styles Manager. I realize now that I've been calling these presets the whole time, but we actually call them styles. Sorry if that was confusing. They're styles, not presets. I need to remember that. You can see the presets are set in here as well. So you can see the tree of styles that we had set up. You can see test 5, which is that one that we made before, and all of the other ones that were available to select as well. You can see them all here, and you can see the changes that are inside each of those as you go through. And then you can use the import and export controls to import and export these styles, even though the file is a .presets file, these styles. So if you've made up a good chunk of, say, in this case, Windows setouts that you want to use in other projects, you can go through here and export those as a .presets file. And then in your other projects that you want to use them in, just come in here again and go import and bring them in that way. So that's from the Doors and Windows menu and under Joinery Styles Manager. There's also another option here called Reapply Joinery Styles. And what that does is that if you go through and make changes to any of the styles in your windows and doors that are used in other windows and doors in this project, so say if I had another window right next to this one that also used JS 3x3C XRX, if I went through and made changes to that preset in this window, it won't automatically apply to this one next to it because it doesn't push the update, but you can go through and push it by using this function here, and that will force that other window to update. So if you do go through and make any changes to presets that are currently being used in the project, so that's kind of you're doing live changes as opposed to setting them up in advance, you can use this reapply option to force all of your existing windows and doors to take on the changes that you've just made. So that's the Doors and Windows presets. If you have any questions at all about that, please do either let me know in the chat or just log a support ticket by emailing nz.support@centralinnovation.com. Just very quickly before I go to any questions that have come through, the other thing that I wanted to cover very briefly was the Keynotes tool. just two things to do with scheduling, which I've heard come up recently. The first one is to include things manually in the schedule. I've had a handful of people ask to do this, and we have actually had quite a few people asked to do this in the past. So the feature is actually in the tool, although it may not be obvious. So I'm just going to very quickly import a database here. That looks fine. Place some things down so that we have something to schedule. There we go. And then we will open up a layout. Okay, so this layout has those labels on it. So if I go to my CI Tools menu, Keynotes, and create a schedule, I'm going to create it for just the current layout. That will go through and make a schedule up for this sheet, which should include just those 3 notes on it, which it does. So that's working nicely. Now, the thing that I've had people asking if you could do is if you can manually add elements to the schedule. So things that aren't actually present on this sheet, sorry, there aren't any labels of on this sheet, but that you want to include in the schedule anyway, you can use this button here, Add to Schedule. And once you do that, it will pop up a sort of a smaller preview of all of the available notes in your database currently, and then you can go through and manually select any that you want to add. Let's choose those 3 just by holding down Control and clicking on all of the ones that we want. Hit OK, and then it's going to say, do you want to add those into every single schedule, or do you want to add them into just this schedule? I'm going to choose just this schedule and let it do its thing. And you can see now my schedule is updated. So it's still a live schedule. It still will update based on the notes that are actually showing in this drawing, but it also will always show these ones that we've manually added to it there. So that's just a nice and quick way that you can manually add in, say if you have a couple of standard notes that you always want to show in all of your schedules, you can go through and do that way. The other thing very quickly that I wanted to look at was having a default schedule for your worksheets, for your layouts. So this might be something that you're wanting to set up in a template or something for your project. You want to always use the same schedule format and you don't like the default one, for instance. You can quite easily do that using favorites. You just need to set your favorite and then update the schedule. So if we come in here and we can make a new favorite, this is just of the default. Oops, did that work? Maybe it didn't like being called 1. That looks better. So we've got test 1 here. I'm just going to do something that's obvious and easy to see the change of. We'll call that test 2. And then we will do it again and go test 3. So we've got 3 presets here now. So let's stick with test 1 for now. So everything's nice and blue. Now, obviously, this this schedule was placed on this sheet, so it will work fine. However, if that's not the case, you can still use these favorites and then force an update to make those actually work. So if I go to a second layout, and I'll open this view so that we can place some of these labels on it. Okay, so it doesn't have labels showing. Oh, this was a bad example of a view to do, but for the sake of example, just so that we can get a schedule going, I will do that. Go back to our schedule, and to our layout and let that update with the new notes. So I'm going to create a schedule on this sheet as you would normally. So I'm going to label just this layout, schedule just this layout. We'll let it create that schedule. Okay, so it's created that schedule. Now I'm going to select the object, the schedule object, and go through and choose one of my presets. So let's choose this pink text one. Click OK, and once I do that, it's going to apply the favorite, which is what we want, but it's also going to apply all of the notes that we had when we saved the favorite, which obviously is not what we want. So once we've done that, just go up to the CI Tools menu again and go down to Keynotes and update this schedule. Sorry, my computer's running on battery, so it's running a little bit slow. So you can see now it has gone through and updated this schedule to show the labels that are placed, that are visible on this view, but it has still retained the style change that we made. Unfortunately, I saved the preset with one that also had manually added notes to it. So that's a trick to watch out for. Because those are manually added to the layout, those will be retained because it considered them to be manually added to this as well. So when you do save your presets, make sure you do it on a normal schedule where you haven't done that, but then you can go through, create as many favorites as you want for your schedules, and then once you apply them, just make sure that you apply them and then update the schedules. It's going to look like once you apply them the first time, that you've lost all of your correct schedule on the sheet, but it just needs an update to make that change. So you can go through, again, it will be a good idea to do this before you start probably getting things into them, but you can apply them at any stage, obviously. Go through and make up a bunch of favorites for the different styles or setouts of the schedule that you want, and then apply those and update, and away you go. All right, that was everything that I wanted to cover today. If you have any questions, feel free to send those through. Otherwise, we can finish up for the day. As I said, the recording will be available on MyCI probably by Tuesday, Wednesday next week. And if you have any suggestions for other things that you would like covered in one of these webinars, please do let me know, either by entering it as a question here or just emailing us on nz.support@centralinnovation.com. Just send an email through to there and just say, hey, attended the webinar, I'd like to see X in an upcoming thing. And that will give us, essentially your feedback is how we're getting the ideas for what we cover in this. We want them to be useful in showing you sort of real world types of things that you want to be able to do. So if you do have any suggestions for those, they would be much appreciated. But it looks like that's it for today. So thanks everyone for joining, and I hope to see you at the next one.